Okay, well, I think it's probably time for us to get on with it. I'm so excited to have you guys here today. Not that any of us want to think about costly lawsuits, but I think we all got to help each other right now. It's a crazy time out there, and so I've been talking to lots of people. We've been doing lots of research, and I thought I would just bring it all to you. And for what it's worth, we can just run through it. I don't have all the answers. I don't have any of the answers, to be honest, but wanted to just share all this stuff with you, and then we'll go from there. So let me jump right in. So for those that don't know us, real quick, who is a wave group? What do we do? We work in a lot of different parts of the industry, and what we really try to do at the end of the day is make that sort of well-oiled machine work better, right? So we work with kind of the consumer side, the MLS side, the vendor side, the technology side, the brokerage side, all of those things, and we try to bring sort of cross-fertilize all the great ideas we hear from all the different parts of our industry to help all of us work together, and not only in the US, but in Canada and around the world. So we do a lot more than I think sometimes people think it's Maryland and that's it. Like, no, there's a lot more to it than this. It's really, I'm getting great insight from my entire team, and my entire team to that point has PR experience, brokerage experience, broker M&A experience, even crypto and, Web3 experience, technology, marketing, project management, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's a lot more than me and Victor, for those that know both of us. And just want you to tell you, we're very proud of what this team has done and the kinds of insights and service that we have been able to deliver throughout the industry. So just real quick on me, again, many of you probably know me, but if not, I'm the founder and CEO of Wave Group, the consulting firm that we're talking through today. We also own RE Technology, and if any of you want to offer that through your MLS organizations, happy to talk to you about that. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. as we speak, in my role as the chairman of the National Small Business Association, which is basically a group that advocates for all of us, because pretty much everyone in real estate is considered a small business. But we don't just work on real estate. We work on in a nonpartisan way for MLS or technology and a whole bunch of other types of companies, from retail to restaurants to farming, you name it, we do that. So I'm right now down here working on Hill visits to advocate on behalf of all of us, helping with things like tax cuts and things like that. So that's what I'm doing here. So let me jump in and let's just go through this, right? So this is kind of where I think we're all coming from right now, right? Especially brokers, and especially the large brokers that we work with, are absolutely no more. We can't take it. We don't want any more. We just cannot afford another lawsuit, right? We can't even afford, the DOJ inquiries that I'm hearing many of you are getting these days, right? We have so many people, which frankly saddens me and probably does you guys too, that, our industry has people that love their customers, they work so hard to try to do the right thing. And yet we're kind of on the wrong side of the media equation at this point, right? Media doesn't understand what we do. They don't believe we do what we do. Lawyers don't think we do. Legal professors don't think that we do the right thing. The DOJ's got issues with us, right? And so looking at all of that, we can just hope for the best and hope that all of those things somehow go away, which I don't believe they're going to. Or we can really start to look internally. We can start introspecting on what are the potential areas of risk that we might have. And instead of letting one of them bring it to us, or all of them bring it to us, which is happening in some cases, we proactively think about it ourselves, and we come up with answers that make sense. Because at the end of the day, if you're a consultant, if you're an association, if you're an MLS, if you're a broker, and even if you're an agent, right? If you're a broker, you're trying to help agents succeed. If you're an agent, you're trying to make clients succeed and live the life of their home ownership dreams. We're all here to try to make, at the end of the day, that whole process work, right? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Big disclaimer. I am not an attorney, not even close, never taken a law school class. I've taken business law 25 years ago. So these are not legal advices. These are just Marilyn's observations, talking to so many of you about areas that I'm worried about. Will they all come through? I hope not. Could some of them come through? Possibly. But I just want all of us to sort of raise our level of awareness and conversation to think through each of these and have a conscious decision instead of just sort of letting it happen to us. Okay. And again, if anybody has any comments or questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them in real time. If not, we can get toward the end, okay? So the first topic, if you're reading anything, clear cooperation is on the chopping block again, right? This was a very controversial conversation when it was put in place 5 years ago, and it's just as controversial, if not more so now. So knowing that, we did a quick bit of research, and by the way, we have another round of clear cooperation research in the field. If any of you would like to take it and or invite your brokers to take it, throw your name into the chat and we'll get that for you, because we, again, want to get as many opinions as we can on this, right? So the first one, and I'm sort of the most recent and working backwards, this just came out this morning. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but Robert Revkin is on a kind of a warpath to get rid of clear cooperation. His latest discussion with Inman this morning talks about how he believes it actually violates the code of ethics. And his logic, again, I'm not here to tell you if anybody's right or anybody's wrong on these things. I'm just getting it all out there so you guys can talk about it at your local markets. His belief is that there are consumers, and I believe practitioners on the call would probably agree with this, that sometimes want privacy, sometimes want to run a trial balloon on a price point, sometimes don't want the clock to start ticking on days on market until they get the house ready to go. And that by forcing them into one set of behavior that we're actually not serving the best interest of the consumer and what their specific needs are. Many want to sell the homes in the way that they want to sell them. Can agree or disagree with him, but he's bringing a code of ethics argument to this, which is a new twist on this. So I wanted you guys to see that. And we did research, whoops, I went the wrong way. Sorry about that. Just last couple of weeks with 670 respondents to ask them, what do they think that NAR should do with the Clear Cooperation Survey? This was done in advance of the first Emerging Issues Advisory Board meeting. And so when we look at, we asked brokers, and MLS leaders and MLS staff to answer this. And 28% of the respondents said they wanted to leave the policy as it was. So 72% had different ideas. And I want to show you how that broke out. So on the MLS side of the house, the number one suggestion was to modify it, right? Because I think MLSs, at least those of you that I've spoken with, believe, as I do to some degree too, that by making sure that homes get on the MLS as quickly as possible, you're creating the opportunity for better consumer transparency. And we're not doing anything to limit the marketing potential of a product or of a property, right? 32% said, let's get rid of it. And then 28% said, again, as is. On the broker side, their number one answer was to get rid of it. Some of them wanted to modify it, about a quarter, and about 25% wanted to keep it. So brokers are more in the camp of getting rid of it. And here's kind of how it plays out. So the broker owner, the person that's actually got on the hook, is the most likely to say, let's get rid of it. And again, the MLS side is not quite as often, but you can see in every single case, there's a good argument that doing something is more what people are looking for across the industry, right? Now, one of the things that we just heard, I think it was in an article, I don't know, I can't keep up. There's articles about this every 15 minutes, but that 88% of brokerages signed onto a letter to NAR saying that if NAR does not remove this policy or maybe makes it unrequired, I don't know how, I didn't see the letter, but this is what I'm hearing, that they are going to issue a class action lawsuit against NAR in order to force them to remove the policy. So again, I'm not here to tell you if you should or you shouldn't. I just want to give you all the data so you guys can get in a room yourself in your own market and you can have a well-educated conversation. And here's some things that I've thought about, and I wrote an article about this a couple days ago. If anybody wants more details on these, I'm happy to. But one of the things I thought about was, if you look at the way the current language, forget about clear cooperation, just when it says a participant must contribute all their listings as part of their participation agreement, right? While there is nothing in there that says it only has to go to the MLS. There's also nothing that says it doesn't only have to go to the MLS, right? So one thing might be to think about some language that talks about it as a non-exclusive requirement, right? You have to put it here as part of being part of the MLS organization, but it doesn't say you can't put it anywhere else. And the truth is, today, MLSs enable distribution of listings in hundreds, if not thousands of places already, right? Whether it be all of the IDX that you enable, whether it be the if you're using something like a list hub and there's 150 plus locations that MLSs push listings to, whether you have direct relationships with some of the sites. But just a thought, right? Maybe we should point that out more obviously, that it's not only for the MLS, it could be for others, but it does have to come to us. Another one that I think is worth exploring, and again, if you haven't seen it, I'm happy to send you a link to it, but you can go to the MRED website and find this. MRED wrote a white paper the first time around with Clear Cooperation about a really interesting concept they launched called the Private Listing Network. This was a tool within the MLS. So there was the active listing part of their system, as well as the sort of private listing version of their system, which has much less requirements for the detail that you need. It can have a price range. It doesn't have to have very many photos. It's a much more slimmed down version of kind of just, sort of a trial balloon for a property. So something to check out if you haven't. Allowing brokers, this one is probably, people aren't going to like this one, but I'm not here to please everyone. I'm here to get you thinking, right? So another thought would be, why don't we allow syndication from the MLS over to other types of private listing network websites? We already allow syndication to, again, hundreds of websites that are third-party portals. Why wouldn't we just add a couple more and enable the companies that believe that we're in somehow being exclusive or anti-competitive? Another thought, right? Another one, and some brokerages already do this, and some markets probably already do this too, but should we think about requiring some sort of a seller disclosure document when a seller agrees they want to provide their listing into some way that is somewhat more limited than the entire MLS operation? Should we just make sure they're educated about the trade-offs on that? Some, again, are making a conscious decision to do that. Just make sure everybody is, right? And have them sign a disclosure that says you recognize it's not going into the exposure of the entire real estate market, right? Another thought. And then, of course, the place where the brokers are going is either unrequired Clear Cooperation, which is interesting, right? So you're kind of, I think some MLSs might be more comfortable with that as opposed to getting rid of it completely, or follow what these 88 brokerages across the country are saying and just get rid of it, right? And again, their reason for wanting to get rid of it is they're afraid they're going to get sued again. Remember, some of these companies, many of these companies, frankly, that settled on their own, $55 million, $87 million, $42 million, they've taken a very large percentage of the cash of these organizations. And I think they're worried, like, we can't survive another one of those things, right? That's a lot of money. And if this one gets the same kind of energy that our first antitrust case got, what will happen to some of these companies, right? So there's no easy answer here. That's the bottom line. This is why I'm showing you everything. You guys have to figure out your own decision, right? But I do think it's important that we take a serious look at what they're asking for and then come to what you believe, knowing your unique situation. I was just on the call with an MLS a little while ago. They don't really have those sort of private listing network problems in their market. They don't have a lot of office exclusives or people holding things back. They said, it's not a big deal in our market. Let's just get rid of it, right? That might be what you guys decide. Or you might say, leave it up to the broker's discretion. If they want to participate, they can. If they don't, they don't. So again, all options for you to consider, but just some ideas for you to maybe put into the mix if you want to think about some different ideas. Okay, here's another one. So this is just, we're just letting it rip today. You guys can tell me if you like these or don't. It's not up to me. It's just giving you ideas, okay? So as some of you probably know, and some of you that are on the call, I know, participate in this. We have a program called the Wave Group Customer Experience Index, and it's a survey that we field in many MLSs across the country. Many of the questions are consistent so that we can actually compare results across markets and can sort of index things to help MLSs understand how are they doing relative to others. So that survey in 2023 was distributed to 250,000 agents and brokers across the country and I think 30 markets or something like that. So definitely a quantitative measurement. And in that survey, we asked people about how interested would you be in a variety of different things to, potentially simplify your life. 72% of the people in that survey said they would like statewide lockbox access. It's a lot of people, right? Certainly not what we do today. And if you remember the settlement we almost had with the DOJ, whenever that was 4 or 5 years ago, one of their criteria was to require us to provide lockbox access to anybody who is a licensee within the state that was being covered in, right? They haven't come back to that yet, but is it logical to think they might? I think it is, right? It certainly was something they looked at before. And so again, are we going to do this tomorrow? It's up to you guys, right? But I want to give you the information so you can look at where people are, and we can, it's sort of those things, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? There's a lot of things I'm going to talk about today, things this is the way we've always done it. Okay, it may be fine. We may want to continue doing it the way we've always done it. But what I'm suggesting is that every market look at it consciously, right? You could do an evaluation and come back and say, we're okay, we're going to stay, or we're going to try option A, B, C, or D, whichever ones that you come up with, right? But I just want you to have the information so you can make educated decisions. So now here's the other side of this. So we just did another survey recently, which we're about to launch, the post-settlement sentiment survey. And this is with, I think 92% of the folks in it are all realtors, right? So it's mostly a realtor communication. So the data I just showed you was also realtors. This one was the second one that just came out recently. And there were more people than not that pushed back and said they would not want non-realtors to have access for fear that they wouldn't be ethical, they wouldn't understand the local market well enough, they couldn't be held accountable. And a lot of these arguments are a lot of the things we're going to talk about with Open MLS in a second too. But so again, there's no black and white answer here, right? There's a lot of people across the country saying that would make my life so much easier. Why do I have to belong to 5 associations to get access to 5 sets of lockboxes when I'm a licensee and should have access to every listing across the state, right? So something to think about there. How would we do that? This might be something if there's state association folks on the call, you may want to take up a discussion across the state to think about what this might look like and how we might be able to make it work, right? Okay, so Open MLS, here's another one. There's so many of these. It's just, I don't think we've ever had this many crazy issues happening at once. So I thought it would be helpful to put them all in one place. So let's start at, this is what got me thinking about Open MLS several months ago. If you look at the settlements for all of the Anywhere brands, the Remax, the Keller Williams, many of the settlements that individual large brokerages or franchise organizations or holding companies, orchestrated, one of the terms of those settlements was that they cannot require NAR membership. And if you roll up all those brands, brokerages representing 600,000 agents, or roughly at least half of our market, if not more, depending on how you count, cannot require NAR membership anymore. And so you look at that as an MLS and say, well, am I going to let's say 100,000 of those agents said, I don't want to be an NAR member anymore. What are we going to do? Just let them walk away from their MLS, not be able to do business? Cut a broker's opportunities by 10, 20, whatever percentage of people that decided to not go in, right? So we did a webinar back in, when was it? March. And we talked to MLSs that have already done this to see how it worked. And so that's what we want to talk about today, right? So many of them said it works fine. Many of the people we talked to were forced back in the late 90s when they had lawsuits in their state to require an Open MLS. So Florida, Georgia, Alabama, California, Illinois, Massachusetts, there's a whole bunch of them, right, that now require Open MLSs, and everything has worked out just fine from their perspective. Now, this is something recently that happened that's, again, spurring people into action on this. There was a broker just recently who is in the midst of suing the NAR, their local association, and their local MLS to say, why are you forcing me to join the association or to get MLS access? And the statement in their lawsuit was, it's akin to mandating membership in a union or other trade organization, depriving members of free choice. This is the kind of thing that happened 30 years ago, right? Which is how we got to many of the Open MLSs we have today. And so again, then I heard from another broker and another in the Southeast that they're thinking about doing something like this. So this could be another round of lawsuits that could happen. And, wouldn't it be better if this is where people are, that we get ahead of it? Again, remember, we have people that cannot require NAR membership and some that may not want to require NAR membership. And we're somewhere in the middle there, right? So, and here's, this is NAR data that today, 38% of MLSs across the country actually already are Open MLSs. So this is not a new concept. Again, many of them started way back in the early 90s. So they've been doing this for 30 plus years. Some people, I think, believe because they haven't done it in their market that it hasn't been available, but it really has been available in many different markets around the country. So good to look at NAR's own data on that to see what they tell us. And so again, another survey that we just put out, we'll be publishing shortly. We asked people, if you could get access to the MLS without joining your NAR membership, becoming an NAR member, what would you do? And 13% said no. This is consistent with a survey 1000 Watt did a couple months ago. I think their number was 17%. So we're all in that range. And then, there's a maybe, depends on the benefits, right? So there's some people that are on the fence about it. They're kind of in the undecided range. So there will be some percentage, nobody wants it to be a large percentage, frankly, if you're part of a realtor association. But the truth is, we don't want to fight what our own brokerages are now being required to do because of their settlements, right? So, what can you do? I think that one thing is, again, within your own conversations, and I've got data on this. I've got the webinar we did a few months ago. I'm happy to send it to if you want. That shows how associations and MLSs in those markets that have been open for years have worked just fine together, how the associations have still been able to thrive. And everything's good. But really think about this. Do you want another lawsuit on this, right? And I mean, looking at it capitalistically, I guess that's maybe not the right way, but at some level, if we can have more inventory, right, from people that are not currently in the MLS ecosystem, and we can have other types of membership classes that we haven't had, that also provides revenue opportunities, right? It's not like it's only about not getting sued. There's potential opportunities to make the MLS even more powerful by having an even broader set of cooperation. So for what it's worth, that's what I would think about. But again, these are for you guys to think about in your own markets. Okay, so this is related to open MLS, but this is another one we haven't talked a lot about yet, but I'm really worried about this one too, okay? So again, we just talked about this. The settlements prohibit NAR, the requirement of NAR membership, and yet NAR policy has not caught up to that, right? So if I'm a broker today in most markets, and some of you are not all doing this, so I'll caveat with that, right? But a lot of people are. If I'm a broker and my agent and I'm a broker and I'm a realtor, and my agent's working for me, today NAR requires them to be a realtor because I'm a realtor. Yet my lawsuit just told me, doesn't matter if I'm a realtor or not, I can't require that membership anymore. So there's this disconnect between the two, right? What do we do about that? And here's something that I really worry about. And again, I'm doing this because I'm just trying to get it all out on the table. You guys do with it as you see fit. But let's say that I'm a broker and I'm from a brokerage that still requires NAR membership because I was not part of any of these settlements, right? And then there's an agent that's from one of the brokerages that cannot require NAR membership, and they go to their broker and say, hey, I don't want to be a realtor anymore. And what are you going to do about that? And the broker that does require it says, well, you have to be a member if you're going to be part of my company. And then the agent says, well, great, I'm going to go over one of those other companies that does not require NAR membership. And you start losing agents over NAR membership. I don't think any of us want that. I don't know where that goes legally. I don't know what that looks like, but I don't think we want to create conflict and recruiting or retention conflict between brokers that are already got so much going on, right? The market's terrible. There's no inventory. They're getting sued. It's just coming at them from all sides. And so we got to think about this stuff, right? We can't just say, well, that's the way we've always done it, so that's the way it is. We've got to think about this. We can't create conflict for them. If we really genuinely in our hearts want to see brokers succeed, we've got to help them. And we have to talk to them, like talk to your brokers about how do they feel about this, especially the brokers that have been in some of these settlements. Do they think it's a big deal? Are they okay with it being that way? Where do they come out, right? Just have real conversation and don't just be like, this is what we do, so blinders on, we can't change. Because that's how we're getting in trouble. The DOJ is looking at things and going, well, that's the way the NAR says they have to do it. It's the way that brokers feel they have to do it. And it may or may not believe from their perspective that it's in the best interest, right? Not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying they may look at it differently than we do. And here's, again, from the survey we just did, real data just came out. 41% of the respondents that we talked to believe it's not fair that agents are required to join NAR because their broker does. So these are our own customers today. This has nothing to do with the broker settlements. These are just actually individual agents and brokers telling us about this, right? And this was actually agents specifically. So there's a good chunk of agents that are questioning that rule too. Now, the flip side of it is, I think that associations have amazing things that they do. But are we bringing that home? Are we communicating it? Are we helping them understand what the world might look like without an association? Are we showing them what the professionalism and education that we do and the advocates that we do, how much it's protecting not only their best interest, but the best interest of their homeowners and their potential buyers and even renters, right? But I think the idea that we're sort of forcing people to do these things is not going to fly in the long haul. Somebody's going to change that, whether it be the broker customer you have, whether that be a lawyer, whether that be the DOJ, someone's going to start questioning these practices and saying, we have to earn our customers. We can't force them to be our customers, right? And again, I'm 100% confident that associations can and do on a regular basis earn their customers, right? We just got to figure out how we're going to do that, because these kinds of requirements are probably not going to fly over the long haul. And here's one that came in really interesting. This came in, I think, just a couple of days ago. You guys may have seen this, that Alabama Association is asking NAR to make membership optional. And what they said is it's time to allow members the ability to choose where they allocate their membership and dues dollars between the local, state, and national. So they're questioning the three-way agreement requirement. And interestingly, we just did research on this too. We've been busy lately doing a lot of research. And we asked people, same survey, if you could choose to join your local, state, and national association individually, how likely would be you to maintain your membership in each of these organizations? So that scale is from a 1 to a 5, 5 being most likely, 1 being least likely. And this is not the first time we've seen this. There's definitely more interest in maintaining local commitment than state, than national, right? So they're asking, why do we have to force people into all three if we can earn our way and earn our loyalty at the local level? So Alabama's asking that question. I have no idea where that will go. I have no idea what NAR is thinking about that. But again, in the spirit of just getting it all out there for you guys, we'll give you the data and then you can do with it as you see fit. But I think it's very interesting that, and it's logical, right? You know people at the local level, you go to the office at the local level, you spend more time there, you have events there, you have award shows there. I mean, it makes sense. But it's still important to have the data so you can look at this in a really objective way. Here's another one, and this is one that's we haven't even, I don't think anybody's been talking about this yet, but it's another one that we've seen. There's obviously we've had a lot of discussion about lack of transparency on compensation, but we haven't talked really at all yet about lack of transparency on referral fees. And so we did a survey, and this was last year, actually. We asked people, these were buyers that had purchased in the last 3 years, was a referral fee paid to anyone that helped connect you to the home you purchased? It's kind of clear they really don't know. 28% said yes, but 72% said no, or I don't know, right? So that's not transparent. There's no requirement to disclose that at this point. Yet those referral fees can cost agents a good chunk of their commission, and of course the brokers that they work with, a good chunk of their payment process too, right? So that's a whole other conversation. Are we gonna jump to, well, you didn't tell us about compensation, now you're not telling us about referral fees? We've got some issues. And we asked people, who did the referral fee get paid to? Again, it was all over the board. Yet 53% of people said, yeah, I really want to know if there's been a referral fee paid. And again, we're not requiring anything with that yet. So another one for us to think about. They're just all over the place. I hope your head's not exploding right now, because some days I feel like mine's going to with all of this stuff. But it's important, again, that we just look at it. We don't have to address every one of them tomorrow, but let's just keep them on the radar, right? Let's keep talking about them so we don't get caught. And here's another group, another group that loves us, the Federal Housing Finance Agencies, that says that referrals inflate commissions by $15 billion. So they're already positioning themselves to say, why are we letting that happen? Do consumers need to know about that? I don't know if they're questioning the agent's participation or the customers or the sites that are offering it, or I don't know. It's all over the place, but they're concerned about that too. So yet another issue. I didn't even know who the Federal Housing Finance Agency was, to be honest with you, till a few months ago. There's so many agencies out there that have something to say about what we do. It's pretty crazy. So, what could you do about that? I mean, could we require some kind of a referral-free disclosure? Could the sites that charge referral fees do something? I mean, again, I don't have the answers here for you. I'm just trying to bring you the areas that you might want to think about as you move forward. So, yeah, so that's a lot. Let me see if they have any questions. Okay, we do have a few. Let me see. Let's see. So, would the broker be able to allow that an agent to become a non-member salesperson under under the 3-to-1 membership rules? The broker is the one responsible for their transactions, right? So, I mean, I believe brokers have to be part of wherever the transactions are happening. I would think we all would agree with that. But can brokers make their own decision about that? Of course, brokers could always make their own decision. With those in settlements, maybe they would argue they can't. But it's what I'm trying to bring to us. Are there any things we're doing as organized real estate that we're somehow either conflicting with what a broker can do, what a broker wants to do, what a client wants to do with an agent, right? Just looking at all of the things. So at the end of the day, we're not doing anything that's, quote, serving our best interest, but not serving the end user, ultimately the home buyer or seller, and the brokers and agents that support them, right? That's really what I'm trying to drive home here. And I did want to let you know that anybody that wants to talk more about this, I'm sure these things are going to be talked about in the next few weeks. I am going to be at CMLS, actually speaking on a panel, kind of talking about appropriate governance and relationship between associations and MLSs. So that should be an interesting one. Victor's talking about data distribution. So I'd love to see you there. And then if any of you are going, love to see you at the International MLS Forum. We're going to be over there in Milan. That's a whole different interesting group of people talking a lot about global real estate standards. What does an MLS, what do you bring from the US MLS market, and what can you bring to other places? So if anybody's going to be there, we're going to be there too. Hopefully we can have a little fun in Milan while we're there. But would love to talk to any of you at one or both of these places. So with that, I'll just kind of stop for a second and let's see if we have any other questions here. Okay, someone asked me to send the MRED link. I will send that to all of you guys after the fact, for sure. Let's see. Oh, and one question interesting, and again, this is one for all of us. How do you see what the world would look like without NAR? I think it's a really important question to ask ourselves. And as we know, NAR does so many things. I mean, I don't think we survive without a national trade. I shouldn't say we don't survive. That's a little dramatic, but I think we are weakened politically significantly if we don't have a national presence. I'm literally, like I say earlier, I'm in DC at the moment advocating at the federal level for small businesses. You have to have a voice in Washington, right? You have to be out there. You have to raise your hand. I think NAR does a great job at the the legislative meetings in May, and they do a lot of things here, not to mention being watchdogs for all kinds of things. So I think we lose big personally, and these just my opinion, you guys say what you want in terms of advocacy. Does NAR have some of the same challenges? I think that all associations and frankly some MLSs have too, of driving home their tangible value proposition to the individual agent. Yeah, I think they do. I think there's probably ways that they can dial up their effectiveness at helping people understand what that world might look like without it. I think a little bit of I don't want to say a scare, that's not right, but what would it look like if we didn't have a national orchestration of the best practices and the best things that serve the best interest of the ultimate home buyer and seller? I think the world would look differently. And I don't think the consumer would necessarily be protected to the degree that we are now. I mean, the code of ethics is in the hearts and minds, let's face it, of people that sell real estate. You guys live that. I mean, sure, are there a few people that try to skirt around it? Of course, that's the same in any kind of an industry. But for the most part, I don't know a realtor that can't tell me something about the code of ethics and can't articulate to me how important it is to maintain those standards, right? So I think to not have that would be a big problem, but love to hear anybody else's perspective on that, if anybody wants to weigh in. Anyway, also another question, how is the FHFA being educated about how referrals work and how it does not inflate commissions, but deflates them? I don't disagree with you, Terry. Again, what's really hard is that there are a lot of people out there becoming, quote, experts of our industry that don't really understand it. I don't know if any of you guys watch this, but again, another link I'll send if you didn't. The University of Minnesota Law School, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, I don't know, time is a warp, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, had a forum, and they pulled together people like the folks from Rex, which was one of the people that has sued the industry, law professors that, you know, that understand the antitrust settlements, companies that are, you know, consider themselves competitive to MLSs. They had a whole day of forums. They invited, or they said they had 400 regulators attending from around the country. So God only knows what state or what agency they were from, but 400 of them. And basically it was, the industry's horrible for 4 hours. We're not transparent. We steer commissions. We blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on about all this stuff. The bottom line of it was they basically said, there's no value in what a realtor does. A consumer could go buy a home for themselves. And what do we need them for anyway? That was their net takeaway. I was ready to kill myself. I was so angry watching it. Sure, many of you would be too. But the truth is they're out there. That kind of logic, quotes, logic, that kind of conversation is out there. And we have to think about that. We have to look at worst case. We have to say, what if all these things happened, and prepare ourselves, whether it be proactively and just get on it and do it, whether it's be, hey, if this happens, here's our answer, right? You guys can all decide how you want to respond to it. But that's really why I wanted to talk to all of you today, is we just got to get conscious. We can't let other people tell us what we're good at, what we're not good at, where we're competitive, where we're anti-competitive. We have to look at that ourselves. So if any of you have, you know, you want to have more conversations about this, if you want to, like, I've been doing a lot of like scenario planning, like kind of taking these kinds of dialogues and, you know, showing us or talking about things and sort of facilitating, you know, what would we do if this happened kind of thing. Happy to help you with that stuff. You know, strategic planning. Obviously, we got to think about these things when we're talking about strategic planning, like the future of the MLS, the future of the association is really dependent not only on what we do as our core value proposition, but all of these other things, right? So anyway, and Miguel just jumped in. I don't disagree with you, Miguel. He said, I think some brokers are trying to kill clear cooperation for their own benefit. Is it really the consumer they're trying to help, or is it their own business? That, again, not for me to make the judgment. I'm just giving you the data. You guys can decide. And Terry said, how do we combat those agents have no value groups, right? It's like, are you kidding me? Have you ever been an agent? Have you ever worked as hard as you work for as many hours and as many weekends and as many Christmas Eves as you do as a realtor, right? And I agree with you. You know, whose job is it to tell that story? I say all of us. I say it's the agent, it's the broker, it's every technology company, it's every association, it's every MLS. All of us have to think about taking a step back. Like there's one product, and a full disclosure, I'm an investor in this, so I'm not pitching it, but I do think one company, to answer your question, is trying. It's called Raise, RAYSE. Some of you may have seen it. Some of you may be investors yourselves. I don't know. But one thing they're trying to do is to count the hours. Like, how many hours does an agent actually work? We did another survey, which I didn't have in here today, but we asked consumers that had purchased in the last 2 years, how many hours did they think their agent spent doing it? And it was everywhere from 1 to like 35. The truth is, the data that Raise is finding is more like 100 or more hours, and complicated deals can be 200 or more hours. And even agents don't realize how much time they're spending, and they're not taking credit for that, right? They're not educating people up front. Here's all the things I'm going to do for you, right? So whether you use a tool like Raise or you do it on your own, I think that's the kind of thing we got to start talking about. Is you have no idea as a consumer when it's your first time out of the gate, or even your second or third or fourth, because you haven't done it in 10 years, if it's even your second or third or fourth, what we do, because agents have been trained to make it look easy, right? We don't want to stress out our clients. We don't want them to think that something could go wrong, because then they're going to get nervous. And there's a lot of truth to that, but going too far the other way and not letting them know, I did this for you, 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 and oh, this might be going sideways, but here's how I'm fixing it, or that might be a problem, but here's what I'm doing for you. Oh, you know, I just spent 3 hours on the phone with blah, doing whatever, right? That subtly or not so subtly taking credit for the way you're curating and you're shepherding them through the transaction process as long as it's done in a way that's humble, right? It's not like, well, let me tell you how great I am. That doesn't work. That can really be something we might want to think about. But to answer your question, Terry, I think it's all of our jobs. I don't think it's any one. I think we got to start thinking about gently, confidently, not arrogantly, but confidently pushing back and saying, here's why you need us. Here's why we're valuable. And oh, by the way, we've done 3 studies in the last 18 months. Every single one of them said, with consumers that had just purchased, we asked them the question, did your agent earn the compensation you provided to them? 88% in all 3 studies, exact same number, which is weird. It doesn't usually happen like that. 88% said absolutely they did. So we have a good leg to stand on, to your point. We just got to figure out how we're going to say it in a way and how often we're going to say it and to whom we're going to say it so that we can start pushing back on that stuff. Because we have a great case. We just have to tell it better. We're a little too humble, right? We just sort of take it for granted. Everybody knows the 75 million things you do when you buy or sell a home. They don't. We have to teach it to them. So anyway, any other questions? Let me see. I think that's it. Can you share our slides are recording with our board members or maybe even some of the members that still ask these questions? Yes, I'm happy to have you do that. I'm going to add a caveat slide at the beginning and the end. I am not an attorney. Do not look at this as legal advice. These are just simply ideas and simply data we're bringing to you to have those conversations. Okay. So yes, the more the merrier. These are the kinds of things we've got to get at the top of people's mind and get them comfortable that, you know what? Here's the bottom line. The word I use for realtors is they're scrappy, right? We have survived pandemics. We've survived financial meltdowns. We've survived buyers markets, sellers markets, REOs. How many things has this industry ridden out? Because why? People love their business. They love their customers. They're smart, they're resourceful, and they'll figure it out. We got to lean on those skills, and we got to remember we have those. And instead of trying to say, well, being a little like insecure about, well, if you don't force them, they won't come. If we build it and they don't come, what's going to happen? It's like, we have already built it. We got to ensure that people are excited to come and recognize why it's important to come and why it's important to stay with the process the way that it is, right? And with the organized real estate as it is, to answer the question, what would it be like if there was no NAR anymore? I think it would look really different. That would be a great question to open a board meeting with. What do you think it would look like? And see what people have to say. So anyway, okay. Yeah, and Dolly said, these are great talking points. Discussions are too one-sided these days, and they're not thinking things on the other side of the issues. I totally agree, right? If anybody interpreted anything here as me telling you should do this or that, don't. That's not what I'm telling you. What I'm trying to do is give you data, give you ideas, give you things to think about, give you sensitivities to potential areas that might come to bite us, and then you take it from there. And again, if you need my help doing that, happy to, but I'll do the same thing with a group. I'll talk about this good side, bad side, left side, right side, right? Because we really don't know the answer. Someone asked that question. Yes, the firm I mentioned was Raise, R-A-Y-S-E. Again, not recommending them. It's just someone asked the question about what can we do to drive home the value proposition. That's a company that is trying to do some things. Do they have all the answers? That's for you to decide, right? But they are trying. So good stuff. And if any of you have heard, you may have, because he's been around everywhere, James Dwiggins speak. James Dwiggins is the owner of that company, of Raise. So if you've heard him speak, you may have heard about some of the value he's trying to create with that entity. All right. Anything else? I know that's a lot. I just threw 14,000 ideas at you. So can understand if it's not, especially on a Friday. I really appreciate your attention to this. Again, if anybody else has something they think is like, hey, Marilyn, you're not paying attention to this one, send it to me, right? The idea is let's put them all in one place and let's help each other figure through this thing so we can come out the other end. This market starts to turn. Good news this week with the basis points, right? 550 basis points. That's good news. That's a step in the right direction on another front. So we're going to be okay. We just got to put our head down. We got to keep ourselves open to change and ideas. And remember, we do great work and we got to figure out how we're going to make sure everyone else understands that too. So, okay. Anything else? Let's see. I think we've got everything. Yeah. So again, just trying to open the door. If you've got other questions or other ideas about these things, or if you want me to, talk to you privately, I'm happy to. But with that, I'll stop the share and let you guys go on to your next meeting. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is very cathartic for me to let it all out and to see if I'm crazy or if other people agree with me or other people have ideas of things that can make these ideas, be solved as well. So have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully I'll see a bunch of you next week at CMLS. If not, maybe I'll see you at NXT in the fall. Thank you.